In the heart of Malawi, a small village was once thriving, filled with life and hope. The people of this rural community lived simply, cultivating the land and relying on the earth's natural resources to survive. There was an abundance of green fields, a river that ran full of life, and children laughing under the warmth of the sun. This was a place where everyone knew one another, where every meal shared at a neighbor's home felt like family. Yet, like many places in Africa, the unrelenting forces of nature began to test their will. The rains came late that year. The fields, which once bloomed with crops, began to crack and dry under the unyielding sun. The riverbeds that had sustained them for generations were now nothing more than dusty reminders of a once plentiful source. The villagers, dependent on their harvests for survival, found themselves in a grim battle against an unforgiving drought. Crops withered, livestock perished, and the once thriving community began to shrink in despair. The fields no longer whispered of life, but shouted of loss. In the midst of this hardship, a young boy named William Kamkwamba watched with quiet concern. His eyes, wide with curiosity, reflected not only the weariness of the world around him but also an undying sense of hope. While the adults around him focused on survival, William's mind was elsewhere, reaching for something far beyond the parched soil and the drying fields. William's family, like so many others, struggled to make ends meet. His father, Trywell, worked tirelessly, but the drought had taken its toll. His mother, Agnes, worried about feeding the family. William's education, like that of many children in his village, had to take a back seat. His school was a small, humble place built from mud bricks, with benches worn by time and chalkboards that often left nothing but smudges. But William, though his education was interrupted, never stopped learning. One day, as the village seemed to lose its energy, William walked into a small community library, a rare treasure in his village. The library was humble, with shelves filled with dusty old books, but it was in these books that William found his salvation. He stumbled upon a book that would change his life forever, using energy from the wind. In that moment, something sparked within him. He read about windmills, how they could harness the power of the wind to create energy, to pump water, to bring light. For William, it wasn't just a book, this was the key to a better future. Determined, William began to study. He knew nothing about building machines, and he didn't have the resources that most engineers would take for granted, but what he did have was a vision, a dream of something greater. He began to collect old, broken-down bicycle parts, scrap metal, and discarded pieces of wood. The villagers, seeing his effort, laughed. "What can a boy like you do?" they would mock. "You're wasting your time." But William didn't care. The sound of their laughter only fueled his resolve. The young boy worked day and night, learning how to turn discarded materials into something useful. He built his windmill with the patience of someone who knew that the future was never easy to grasp. He attached blades made from broken bicycle wheels, built the frame from old wooden poles, and connected the parts in a way that seemed impossible. But to William, it wasn't impossible, it was simply a matter of believing. Finally, after days of hard work, his creation was ready. He stood back, his heart racing, and watched as the wind began to blow. With every gust, the blades of his windmill began to turn, and for the first time in his life, William saw his dream take flight. The windmill pumped water, bringing life back to the parched fields. It illuminated a small bulb in his home, casting light in the darkness that had plagued them for so long. William's village, once dimmed by the drought, now buzzed with energy and hope. His neighbors, who had once doubted him, gathered around his windmill, amazed by the young boy's ingenuity. They watched as the windmill, powered by nature itself, brought forth not only water but also electricity. It was a small victory, but for the people of the village, it was a victory that would change their world. Word of William's achievement spread far beyond the village. A local newspaper reported on the young inventor, and soon, William found himself invited to speak at conferences and events. He spoke of his village, of the challenges he faced, and of how a simple dream, when nurtured with hard work, could change the world. William's story resonated with people all over the world. From a small village in Malawi to the grand stages of the world, William had become an icon, a symbol of hope, determination, and the power of human ingenuity. Years later, William would find himself at Dartmouth College in the United States, surrounded by world-renowned scientists and engineers. He had gone from a boy with a dream to a young man on a mission to change the world. And yet, despite his global success, he never forgot his roots. He returned to his village, bringing new technology, new hope, and a new windmill that stood tall against the horizon. William Kamkwamba, the boy who had once been laughed at, had become a symbol of what can happen when a dream is nurtured with determination, hard work, and a belief that no challenge is too great to overcome. His story reminds us all that true power is not in what we possess but in how we use it to uplift others. Like William, our talents and abilities shine brightest when we use them for the greater good, when we dare to dream and build a better future, even in the face of the fiercest storms.